2 minutes, 2 minutes.
We have a marvelous collection of vendors here at the San Diego Crew Classic, and we certainly invite you to enjoy seeing what they have to show and offer. Most specifically, we have the outstanding coverage of our camera locations throughout the course area and the races. And about 60 minutes after an individual race ends, available in the merchandise tent is a DVD of that particular race. Highest quality in the production value that we have here at the Crew Classic this year, and it would be an outstanding souvenir for just $15. A DVD of an individual race that you might have an interest in. Pick it up as the supply lasts, starting about 60 minutes after the race ends. We also have a Karl Strauss beer garden here, if that is your pleasure. It is down a little bit south of the main tent on the grassy knoll, as it were.
Lane 7, California.
And the admonition,
warning,
of course, there would be
to
do
start.
not drink and row at the San Diego Crew Classic.
Next race on the program is
Stanford
the
A, Princeton, Tulsa, British Columbia.
Lane assignments, event number 81, Women's Collegiate Lightweight 8 Final.
California.
1, Stanford A. 2,
We have lost
Princeton
alignment.
University.
When we regain
3,
alignment,
the
I will
University of
read
Tulsa.
the start
4,
protocol.
University of British Columbia. 5, Stanford University B-Boat. 6, MIT. 7, University of California, Berkeley.
A reminder to all crews, please scull to get your point, do not row.
The wind continues to be tricky down here, and the coxswains are having their boats sculled, so the bows pointed more towards the bridge on the port side.
Stanford A, Princeton, Tulsa.
Starter is now announcing the crews
Stanford B, MIT.
after she says California.
Attention,
We'll start.
go!
There we go. Event number 81, Women's Collegiate Lightweight 8 Grand Final. 7 crews, all handling the starting chores quite nicely. The Tigers over in lane 2, brightly colored orange singlets, moving out to a slight advantage. Over Stanford A in lane 1. Then it's UBC in the 3rd spot. Back and forth, University of Tulsa. Then it's the Stanford B boat. And then Cal Berkeley Trails. Right now, it's Stanford A on the lead. When they made their shift, they moved out to about 5 seats, now 6 seats over Princeton University in lane 2. Then the University of British Columbia is in that 3rd spot, followed by the Stanford B crew, then the University of Tulsa, then MIT and California Trails. Coming up to the 500-meter mark, your race leader in lane 1, the Stanford Cardinal A boat, followed by Princeton in that second spot. Third spot is the University of British Columbia. Then the University of Tulsa. Then the Stanford B boat, MIT, and the 7th position, it's Cal Berkeley.
The women's collegiate lightweight final, and we do not have a book on these crews because this is their first time out. 7 entries in this particular race, with the Stanford A boat on the lead, and they're being shadowed by Princeton.
And in fact, not only do we not have a book on this race, but as far as I can tell, through looking at early season race records, none of these crews have raced before. This is their first competitive hit out of the year, which tells you something about women's lightweight rowing. We have 2 boats from Stanford, who are the only varsity lightweight program on the West Coast. And the crew from the University of California, Berkeley, are a club lightweight program. Most of the lightweight competition in both men and women is concentrated in the northeast of the country. And that's why we have strong crews from MIT and Princeton at this regatta. Tulsa have always had a very strong lightweight women's program.
Stanford A crew continues on the lead. This is Tulsa stroking hard to try to hang in there. The crew in lane number 4, British Columbia, also inserting themselves into the action. Stanford A, Princeton, British Columbia. Tulsa, the Stanford B boat, MIT and Cal on the far outside trailing.
Stanford A boat has well and truly stamped their authority on this race. They're just about coming down to the 1,000 meter mark, and by the looks of it, they may have open water on Princeton in lane 2, who are being overlapped by Tulsa. So Princeton may have about a half boat length lead, maybe 3/4 of a boat length lead over Tulsa as they come through into the third 500.
In the middle of our race course there is British Columbia, and they're beginning to make a bit of a move, but it is Stanford A with the lead, actually open water back, and then Princeton. Tulsa has dropped back. British Columbia still continues to be in the hunt. The Stanford B boat is trying to keep pace. MIT on the outside, and then Cal on the far outside, struggling a bit in this one. But Stanford A along the shoreline at British Columbia, trying to get in there, with Princeton also on the challenge. Then the Stanford B boat, Tulsa, MIT, and Cal. Not nearly as windy through the area that has been of a concern in previous races as it has been, and the wind has moved around where it is cross course rather than straight up or down. So the challenge is to get through that wind tunnel area without too much difficulty, and as Charles has mentioned earlier, to be on the lead there and just concentrate on technique seems to be the strategy that's going on now. This is the Stanford A boat, and they have opened up water between themselves and Princeton. British Columbia made a run at it, but they have fallen back just a bit, as has Tulsa on the outside. The Stanford B boat is keeping British Columbia in view. Then comes MIT and Cal trailing far to the outside.
So we have Stanford handily in the lead at the moment. Their only real challenger is coming from Princeton. I misspoke earlier when I said that Tulsa were putting in a challenge. That was actually University of British Columbia. So as we look across the race course at the moment, it's Stanford A, Princeton, University of British Columbia, Stanford's B boat, and then close between the trailing Tulsa and MIT boats, with the club program from Cal generously quite a ways back.
This is the Stanford A boat, and we're working on the women's collegiate lightweight final. and they have an open water lead back to Princeton. British Columbia keeps trying to make a move up, but so far the leaders have fought them back, and there's still some open water back to there. Then we go to the outside, the Stanford B boat, and then trailing what might be an interesting fast finish between Tulsa and MIT, and then California struggling as they are far back. This is the Stanford A boat on the lead, and a couple of boat lengths almost of open water back to Princeton. Generously, let's give them one. And then one boat length of open water back to British Columbia. Pretty much the same stretch back to the Stanford B crew. And then it might be kind of fun to watch Tulsa and MIT go after each other, as looks like Tulsa now has the better of that. Back to our finish, it was Stanford A, Princeton coming in second in the unofficial standings, and then it appears that British Columbia will be the next one in. Then outside for the Stanford B boat. Tulsa looks like they've gotten the better of MIT as they close some ground there, and MIT and then the crew from Cal just moving along trying to finish off this race.
Lane assignments, event number 82, Women's Collegiate Novice 8 Grand Final. Lane 1, Cal. Lane 2, University of Minnesota. Lane 3, University of Washington. Lane 4, UCLA. Lane 5, University of Oklahoma. Lane 6, Washington State University.